Welcome to Danny's Podcast.
This is the Redefining Plastics Podcast. Welcome to the Redefining Plastics Podcast. My name's Justin Riney. We have Samantha Ryan again, and we are back from an extended trip / time off for the 4th, and hopefully everybody had a great time. I know, Simon, you're out there in France. You're not exactly celebrating the 4th, but glad to have you here. I've been following your work on LinkedIn for a very long time. And so I've been quietly stalking your posts for probably the last 2 years. And just always love what you have to say. I would put you as an expert in chemicals and understanding how all these things work. And really happy to have here Simon Maechling.
Yeah.
See, I did it right. I'm very impressed with myself for the first time. But yeah, happy to have you here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and we'll just run from there.
Yeah, thanks so much for the invitation as well, to talk a little bit today, to have a chat. So I'm probably have the least French accent for a Frenchman. And maybe I'll just say, my father's French, my mother's English, and so that's where my nationality and my accent come from. I liked how you introduced it. So I would also say I'm an expert in chemistry. So my PhD is in organic chemistry. And so I studied that for a long time. And I've been working in the chemical industry for the last 20 years, specifically in big ag, biocrop science, in R&D, in chemistry, in the crop protection division.
I think that leads to the conversation of you are not a plastics guy.
I am not a plastics guy. I'm not a
that's
plastics expert.
Yeah, that's not the purpose of the conversation. This is a plastics-centered podcast, but I think you and I are on similar crusades. I am not a scientist. I make that very clear to everybody I talk to. So I don't have opinions on things. I go off of what experts say. And so when you say something, I take that as there's an expert speaking. So I'm going to take that information. There are several other people that I run into like that, but I don't come to my own conclusions when it comes to science because I don't know what I'm doing or talking about. Not everybody on the internet feels that way. A lot of people on the internet feel like they have a PhD in chemistry and have very loud voices and say things authoritatively, and it drives me insane. And I know you are also fighting those same battles. So that's why I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to talk to you about just the understanding of chemistry by the layperson and the lack thereof, and then just the understanding of like causality, I think, is a big thing. Like just understanding correlation and things like that. You had a great post yesterday that I reposted about correlation and causality. Why don't you start there? Why don't you talk through kind of where your head was at when you put that together? Because I immediately reposted that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'll come back to that. Before I do, cats are a great way to teach science.
Okay.
And I'll come back to that comment a bit later. And I want to start on the sort of chemistry journey and some things which are really important to me and why I started talking on social media. LinkedIn is the platform we're talking about, around chemistry and some basic science, because I noticed in conversations with my family, my friends, and the famous Saturday night barbecue, I noticed that there was some general misunderstanding, miscomprehension, or lack of understanding around some certain basic chemical or scientific concepts. And I really wanted to share them because I'm so passionate about my subject and what I do and what I've done in the lab. And I'll start with these basic concepts that may or may not have been forgotten by many people. The first one being that all matter consists of chemicals. And I had a conversation maybe just 10 minutes ago on another platform, H2O. So some people may call it dihydrogen monoxide. There may be other names going around for it. It's called water. Is a chemical and described by a chemical formula. The same way that ethylene, C2H4, is also a chemical, and a very useful chemical in your industry, the
Yeah.
plastics industry, for making polyethylene, which is a plastic which you know much more about than I do. And so the first principle, which I've realized that people have just kind of forgotten, is everything, all matter is made of chemicals. The second one, which is equally important, and also been forgotten, is that all chemicals are toxic at a defined dose. And this may sound scary the first time you realize it, but if I break it down a little bit and give some examples, I may try to bring away some of that fear. We mentioned water. Water is also a toxic chemical. It's called drowning. When you have too much of it around you, if you drink too much, it can also cause toxic reactions to you. And so, to have a scientific discussion on chemistry, you need to understand all matter is chemistry. All chemicals are toxic at a certain dose. And then the most important concept and the most difficult for most people to understand is it's the dose that makes the poison. And so if I'm not drinking lots of water, then I'm not drowning. If I'm not being exposed to lots of water, I'm not drowning. The same for any other chemical, which we could mention from a long list of chemicals, and I'm sure we'll mention other ones later on. And so I started this journey with these three basic concepts in mind: is how can I help the layperson, the social media guru, the keyboard warrior understand these three simple scientific concepts?
Yeah. And I'm sure it's as frustrating as it is for me talking to legislators about what I'm dealing with, because they are in the same boat of the people that you're talking to. I don't have the tools, though, to help those people understand as well as you can. So what I've found myself doing recently is just regurgitating what you say to legislators when I'm talking to them, because it helps. It really does help, because just the framework, I think, is the part that people are really struggling with. Just understanding, because these are some big concepts that we're talking through. And people are, let me be careful on how I say this. Most people want to do the right thing. Most people are trying to make the best decision with the information that they have. So that typically comes out as, in my world, well, there's microplastics everywhere, so we need to ban it all. Okay, I understand. I have empathy for that thought process, but that's only part of the picture. There's so much more to it. And I know in your neck of the woods and what you're dealing with, it's very similar. And similar in, people are talking about, we need to have organic, we need to have this, we need to have that. It needs to be chemical free. You know how many times I've seen packaging that says chemical free? It's just insane to me that anybody could put that on packaging and get away with it. But what do you think about that when you see that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, the chemical-free one is one that really I really enjoy when I notice that, the chemical-free one, because no matter is chemical-free.
Yeah.
You can argue this all day long. It comes down to a simple fact that all matter is chemicals. And so this is one thing which I think it gets me on my soapbox, and I love to take the opportunity to talk about chemical-free. People that talk about chemical-free posts is one thing that I love to discuss with the public, because it's just not true. And then while we're talking about chemical-free, you mentioned the microplastic situation, which is, again, I'm not an expert on microplastics at all, but I do want to lay out the parallel discussions that we have on pesticides, which we use in crop protection, and pesticide residues. And so microplastics, at least to my understanding, are very small particles found in stuff, detected in whatever's being detected and published. Residues are very similar, pesticide residues. And the parallel is that we're talking about very small quantities or very small concentrations of material that is detected and quantified. And I think that's where these two worlds really come parallel, because both suffer from the same fear-based marketing, which is basically around detection equals danger, which is not the case.
So, Sam, from your perspective, coming like your generation, I think personifies this way more than anybody else. That just it's very black and white in my experience. And you can correct me where I'm wrong, but the amount of people that I've talked to that are Gen Z or even younger that'll say, well, it's there, we need to get rid of it all because it's killing us. It's like it's just a general misunderstanding of what the heck is going on in the world. Are you experiencing that when you're talking to people?
Not when I'm talking to people. I feel like just because my generation or even just people my age are so massively absorbed with social media. And I think the issue is, and I mean, I'm not going to say that I'm not an expert even in an expert in plastics and much less of chemicals. So I just kind of live my life by, I eat what I want. I like what I want. I'm not really worried about it. I've made it this far. So, but I think the issue really is that, like I said, like I'm probably guilty of this, is like you see something on TikTok of somebody, sometimes it can even be AI. Like you can literally tell AI to say quite literally anything. And they'll explain, I just saw something about oat milk being like so bad for you. And my sister drinks oat milk. So I sent it to her and she was like, that is not like true, like at all. And I'm like, oh, like I believed it. They got me like.
And that's
You
the
know what I
problem,
mean?
right? That's
but
that is the crux of this conversation.
And like right after I saw that video, I was like, I mean, I don't drink oat milk, but I'm like, no, I'm definitely not drinking oat milk because of what I saw.
Well, it's gross. That's the first problem.
Yeah, that is the number. Like you shouldn't drink oat milk.
That's the only reason not to drink
chemicals are not. Oat milk is a big no. But I think that the big issue is like social media, maybe not AI as much because like if you like are kind of smart, you can tell it's AI, but can literally say anything. And then you're like, oh, like, that sounds like it's right, especially for somebody who's kind of uneducated, especially in chemicals like I am. So I don't hear people talking about it as much except for online. And that's where it's super believable.
Your generation doesn't even talk to each other. You're texting.
Right. Except unless it's online. Like,
yes.
Because after I saw that oat milk thing, I went to the comments and it was like, that's not true. And I'm like, well, who do I believe here? I don't know either of you.
The oat milk sellers were all on there. I'm like,
you could be lying. You could be lying. That's why I'm like, I just don't care. I'm going to drink whatever regardless. But I do think that it's just become even worse now that you can really say anything and anybody will believe it. And like, the only way you could really know, I guess, is if you get a degree in chemicals.
Get an expert.
Listen
to people that know what they're talking about.
Right.
How hard is that?
It does make sense to me, obviously, that it's always the amount. Because obviously things, like you said, there's chemicals in everything. And that's just, it's so silly. And I always think of like moms when they look at the bottom, this thing's filled with chemicals. And I'm like, well, they don't just, because I have wondered when you read ingredients or something and I don't recognize half the stuff. And I'm like, why would they even, like, what's the point?
Like preservatives,
you know what I mean?
And all that?
Like, what is that in there for? But I mean, it doesn't change my mind about it. But it's always like, it's in there for a reason. Like, it's not, you're good. Like,
and this is exactly what both Simon and I are fighting with.
Yeah, like, you're going to be cool. Like, don't think about it. Just do it. I think the only thing, maybe you can clear this up for me, Simon, because I am a dog mom. Pesticides on like leftover, if it was like a pest control, is that toxic to dogs if they're smaller because they'll get bigger doses because it's not like a human taking in that amount?
You mean like in yards and stuff like that?
You only spray like stuff?
Not
because
a bad
it's
question.
The amount of dose, but since it's a smaller being, the dose can be worse.
This is a really good question, Sam, and thank you for doing it. I'm going to take a small detour if I can to get there, because I want to just talk about the benefits of pesticides when it comes to pets. So I have two schnauzers. One is about 8 kilo, the other one about 9.5 kilo. And one of the real benefits of insecticides is I treat my dogs preemptively. So I treat them with a pill, a tablet, which they take. and it protects them from ticks.
I do
you know
that.
ticks, yeah. So
Mhm.
ticks, just very briefly, the ticks will latch onto the dog's skin. They'll draw blood. While they're drawing blood, they'll insert. So before they suck, they push, they spit, if you like, a small analgesic, so something to stop the pain. The dog doesn't notice. And when they push in this liquid, there can be diseases, viruses transferred from the tick to the dog. And so the insecticides, what they do, they work very quickly. And the idea is that very quickly the tick, the insect, will die before all of this happens. It will suck a little bit before it pushes, and it will die instantly. So there's less transfer of disease for the dog because tick-borne diseases are a real problem with family pets, especially in rural areas, countryside areas in the springtime. And so I want to start with the benefit of using spot-on or tablet insecticides for our pets, to avoid the pets getting sick or the pets getting ill. So there's a real benefit from using modern technologies to stop diseases, in this case for our pets. That wasn't your question, though.
Well,
It's
I
a good
did just
preface.
order.
Yeah.
I did just order my Simparica trio from
There you
Chewy.
go.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
But your question was really around exposure.
Mhm.
So what you're saying is there a risk? Because we need to talk about risk. Is there a risk when my pets are in a yard after a pesticide has been used, et cetera, et cetera? And so it's about exposure. And so when we're talking about risk, which is very different to hazard. So I don't know if I can just take a
Yeah.
quick second
That's a
detour.
good start. Yeah,
We will
run
get
with it.
there. Hazard and risk. So hazard basically means, is there a potential of harm? And if I give you some examples of what a hazard is, a hazard would be me standing at the edge of a cliff making a TikTok video. There is a potential for harm because there's a cliff and there's something I could fall over. But what I could do in order to mediate this potential, this hazard, is put up a fence. And so by putting up a fence, if I'm walking backwards whilst filming and the hazard is I could fall off the cliff, if there's a fence there, the fence would stop me. And so I'm turning a hazard into a risk, and I'm sorry, the French word keeps coming back. I'll get the English word in a minute. I'm mediating the hazard. And I'm making the cliff edge safer for social media fans, TikTok gurus, etc., when they're doing the film. The same occurs for almost everything that we do in life. So just spending a little bit more time on risk. Getting into a car is a risk. We control or reduce that risk by wearing a seatbelt, by having airbags, by having simple things like indicators to indicate to other drivers that we should be going left or right at a certain time. So each moment
Nobody
of our
uses
lives,
those, by the way.
they do in
It's a
France.
different argument.
Some of them do in France.
Yeah.
And don't start me on French drivers. So we have all these risk mitigation measures that we use in our daily life to avoid problems. And so coming back to your question on exposure, is there a risk of my pets being in the yard? Well, all pesticides are regulated. They're heavily researched. They're heavily regulated and they're heavily controlled. And there will be on the label, there will be instructions for what's called a post-application interval, which will basically say after application, avoid going to the area for X period of time, which could be an hour, a day, a week, whatever it says on the label. And that's your safety net in terms of, is it safe afterwards? Well, let's read the label and we'll wait that specific period of time before my dog goes into that area, into that field or wherever it is, in order to avoid any unnecessary risk.
And that's usually based on like the smallest possible pet that would go in there.
It's
That's
based
the time frame.
on an enormous number of parameters. And yes, it will be based on a highly sensitive species.
Yeah. So
Like a little hamster.
like when you're, yeah,
For example.
it could be. So when you're walking down the street, Sam, with your dog, and you see a sign that says, do not walk on this yard until 10 a.m.
That's
Don't
something
walk
that I
on the yard
should
until
listen
10 a.m.
to.
Yeah.
Okay, that sign I should
Yes.
actually take seriously.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Okay.
it's a good question because it drives at the bigger discussion here, because people will say, well, we need to go to organic pesticides. And there's some arguments to be made that there are some pesticides that can be made organically using naturally occurring, but it doesn't work as well. I don't know about you. I've tried. I had a dog once that had a reaction to the Simparico type stuff. So I had to do natural stuff for him just because I was worried about other things. And this also is my stupidity of chemistry, because I just lumped them all in and said, well, he had problems with one, he's going to probably have problems with all of them, which not true.
Not true.
But that's just a fear I had.
Yeah.
And that's what's driving 99% of all of this. It's fear mongering, fear sells. They say sex sells, fear sells just as much. And I just driving, if you look through my LinkedIn feed, it's typically NGOs that I follow that are anti-plastics, or plastics people, or other chemistry people that I enjoy reading. And 90% of my feed is plastics are going to kill you. Plastics are killing us. And that's like, I understand.
I would even go so far, sorry to cut you off, but I would even go so far to say that plastics have saved countless numbers of lives.
Yeah.
And again, I'm on your turf now, so
Yeah.
But if you look at the use of plastics in terms of sterilized instruments in hospitals, being able to keep bags of blood, and all the things that you know about, I'd say actually the opposite. Plastics have saved a countless number of lives.
Yeah. And the fact is that nobody wants to talk about that. They want to talk about microplastics. I think there's just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's this big movement towards natural in the world. Is everybody assumes that if it's naturally occurring, it's better than synthetic. And it's my experience that there's just as much danger in the natural world as there is synthetically. What do you think about that? Like, am I onto something there? Am I way off base?
No, you're completely onto something here, and this is what I call the appeal to nature fallacy. So the belief that natural is naturally good and synthetic is naturally bad.
Anybody who smokes weed talks like that, just for the record.
It's
great. It comes from the earth. It's safe for me.
Yeah. And this myth is a myth which it's the most common fallacy I come across every single day, the appeal to nature fallacy. And it's a fallacy because some of the most toxic compounds known to man are natural substances. The most famous one is botulinum toxin, which is one of the most toxic substances we know. And yet people inject it into their face to get rid of their wrinkles, Botox, or to make their lips Botox.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this appeal to nature fallacy is especially interesting when it comes to keyboard warriors fighting their natural corner, because of course computers aren't natural. Neither is the internet. Neither is electricity.
Yeah.
And I go on undersea cables taking signals. So all of these things, none of these things are natural. Yet there seems to be a desire by certain groups to bring in fear and synthetic equals bad, natural equals good, which is on itself not true. And even so much so, I'd go a step further. I'd say it's thanks to technologies like plastics, crop protection products, fertilizers, and genetics that today we live longer than ever before. So life expectancy today is roughly double than what it was 100, 150 years ago. Let me just sort of say 70, 80 years old today is now normal, whereas 100 years ago it was roughly average life expectancy was half. So all of these synthetic, unnatural technologies have led us to live longer, healthier lives.
What do you think causes all this? Why do you think there's such a drive towards this thought process?
I wish I knew the answer.
I do too. I'm trying to figure it out myself. That's why I'm asking.
I feel like from what I see, it's like the natural side of like wanting to be completely like clean of everything is, I mean, I see it all over like social
Like beauty
media.
products.
It's all,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like, I was talking to a friend about this the other day because we were talking about how much money we spend. And we're like, well, we just want to keep up with the trends. Like you see trends on TikTok and you want to like, for some reason, like even if you don't like it, like you want to be it, like you want to do it too. And there's been this is like a whole nother side, but this new thing with like people online are losing a ton of weight and they're selling their courses, but like they've been on Ozempic the whole time. And it like comes out and people are like, what the heck? Honey, you've been lying. So it's like people will say that like, oh, I'm on this snap. I did this for so and so months and this happened to me. And it's like I said, people literally will
So you
believe
say
anything.
it's all BS is what you're saying.
Well, no, I'm not saying it's all BS, but I'm saying maybe that's why people think this way is because people pour them all of these, whether maybe for some people it's true and maybe because I'm sure like for some people they do natural things and of course your body's going to change, but they might lie for monetary purposes or to go viral. And then everyone's like, well, I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to do that now because this person got these results from it. Or they feel like this in the morning, or now they, can walk 20,000 steps instead of 10. Like, I don't know.
Well, but that means they're tapping into the ethos of the whatever society that you're in. So that means that they're tapping into something that already exists. So
Right.
that's the part that I'm trying to figure out. And I think, and this is just me spitballing here, we have become so inundated with technology around us, and specifically younger generations spend so much time indoors that they don't go outside. And so there's just this huge disconnect between actually being in nature and having that desire, that human desire to actually be in nature, because that's where we grew up as a species. And I think that's driving a lot of this, because nobody's ever outside, and they figure that if they just change some products that they're buying or eating or consuming, then all of a sudden they're going to be in touch with nature.
Yeah.
When all they have to do is step outside, just go for a freaking walk and go for a hike.
No, that's
just
true.
be outside.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think, Simon?
I think that we're starting to get somewhere here on why there is this appeal to nature. Why do people think that having we mentioned chemical free? My other pet hate is the made from 90% natural products label, or however many it is, Sam, on your shampoo. 90% derived from natural.
I don't even
ingredients.
know. I just buy what I like.
Yeah.
I'm
You're not the target market.
No, whatever makes my hair soft is good for me.
All right.
And I like those ones because we could sit here and argue that crude oil is natural. And so everything
is.
derived from crude oil is natural.
Yeah.
And so these marketing labels, which are there, which we're fed daily through our feeds and on the television, and we're convinced that buying these is better because of this. And I think we're making some ground here. That I think there's a desire, and perhaps an unconscious desire, to this return to nature, to be more natural. Natural setting, natural food. I heard a lot of times as well. I think
And
just
these
a
are all
general
like
desire.
city dwellers for the most part that are really pushing this. And when you look outside, like I was in Houston a couple weeks ago, it is wall to wall concrete.
Yeah.
And
Nothing
I
natural
wanted to
about
be in
that.
nature after 2 days. I'll tell you that, because I didn't see nature the entire time I was there.
Yeah. I think we're getting somewhere on this. But again, I don't know why and how this came about. Thinking as a chemist, or thinking of everything around me as a chemist. I mean, some people see a computer. I see polyvinyl chloride. I see an aluminum water bottle next to me. I see cellulose in the brochure, and some other plastic gloss. And I sort of see the world broken down into different elements, different chemical structures sort of around me. And so it's difficult for me to answer your question on why we think natural is better, because none of the settings I'm sat in today are natural. And when I go home in my house, none of it's natural. And neither is my garden, because it's a small garden that I tend to myself.
So it's like AstroTurf back there?
No, I've got 20 square meters and 4 tomato plants.
Oh, all right. Fair enough. And they're all genetically modified, I would assume.
Well,
And that's another
hybrids, yeah.
thing. So I came out of the agricultural industry. And so really pisses me off, this genetically modified, so GMO free. I couldn't for the life of me figure out the GMO part. But it's like everything is genetically modified. Humans are genetically modified. That is when two people mate, that is genetic modification. What comes out of that is just the offspring of putting two creatures together. It's the same thing we're talking about with, we're not adding in just a bunch of crazy stuff into this. It's just, it drives me insane. It
And you've
literally
hit the nail on
drives
the
me
head
insane.
here. The acronym GMO or the phrase genetically modified is absolutely useless as a descriptor, and it really highlights the uselessness, for want of a better word, of what this descriptor is. And I think genetically engineered is a much better term that we should use, where there's been an intervention to put a gene from a jellyfish into into another
Whatever it
species,
is you're talking
like a
about,
plant, to make that plant fluoresce. Genetically engineered is a much better descriptor to use. So GMO is just a useless term. Because as you've correctly said, sexual reproduction is a form of genetic modification.
Yeah, we're just talking about breeding. That's all we're talking about with these things. And this is just the one thing that is crystal clear for me is acronyms sell. The small acronyms, because people don't have to understand what it really means, and they see it and they think danger. And that's exactly what your post the other day was about, is you think there is a danger in whatever it is, and so you run with it and you make buying decisions, you make life decisions. Some people wrap their whole being around, I am not going to do this thing because I'm so afraid of it. And it shocks me.
Exactly.
It just does.
And the big one at the moment, I don't know if I can say it online, but PFAS.
Oh my God.
As an acronym. Don't know if
For
you want to
what?
say anything.
PFAS is, the people call them forever chemicals. Have you ever heard anybody talk about that? Do you have a non-stick pan in your house anywhere?
Oh,
Teflon?
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
People assume that because these things are staying around forever, which is a misnomer. That, let's just be clear. These are not actually forever chemicals. There are some PFAS chemicals that can be dangerous at high concentration levels. Yeah, we agree. But using a nonstick pan is not going to kill you. It's not even going to make you sick. But
That's what I'm saying. I've made it this far. Wouldn't people know that by now?
Yeah.
Like, I've used a non-stick pan for 20 years.
You know how much time, money, and effort went into checking Teflon to make sure that it was approved for food contact?
Right. Like, you would think they'd check up on that.
Yeah. And let's be real. The FDA doesn't always get it right. There are some chemicals that we find out later have some side effects that we didn't know about. But this is a highly regulated industry. And that's the thing. People just assume. So, Simon, we're not talking about the companies that we work for, but people assume that the companies that we work for are out to lie. And that is really what it comes down to, that we're just looking to make money. And because of that, we're going to say whatever it takes to sell our products. When in fact, I was on a call today where I was pretty much telling people I wouldn't do that. I don't think that's the right thing to do for your company. I go out of my way to tell customers what it is that they need and help them find solutions to what they need. I know you're doing the same, because if we don't keep our customers happy and we just start selling them a bunch of stuff, eventually they're going to come back and be like, well, this didn't work for me. And you told me it was. And then we're not going to have that customer anymore.
And I mean, I'd go even one step, totally agree. And I'd go even one step further. I mean, I buy my food and groceries at the same place as Joe Bloggs does down the road. I don't have a secret entrance to a supermarket.
Yeah.
To buy food.
You're eating this food too, yeah.
Of course I am. And so I'd even go one step further to say, as a scientist, I don't wake up in the morning and think, oh, let me do some dangerous things today and see what harm I can cause.
You're like the mad scientist.
Exactly. That is not me. I am not the mad scientist. As a scientist, I wake up and think, well, how can I use my skill and knowledge base to help make something better, more efficient, improved in a different way? And how can I use this to help improve what we're doing and make it better? And you mentioned the FDA, and yes, I would try to argue as well that the proof that the scientific method works is because there have been discoveries that some things didn't turn out exactly as said in the past. And we've learned from that. We've made a hypothesis. We've tested the hypothesis, and we've got a result from that testing which says, yes, this is okay. Up to all the knowledge we have today, this is okay for this use or this context. And then we find something new, and then the FDA says, well, actually, we've got this new thing. We need to stop that and move to this one because this one's better or improved in a certain way. What really gets me on my high horse is when there are pushes from groups of people for a blanket prohibition or ban on something, when the evidence tells us still today, 40 years later, this is still safe to use. With all the new data we've collected in the last 40 years, it's still okay under these conditions.
Yeah, that's
Well,
my daily life right there in a
where
nutshell.
do you think, because when you talk about like the nonstick pans, the first question that comes to mind is like, because usually when people worry about or start talking that that's bad for you, they come from a situation that may have occurred from it. So where do you think that idea stems from? Because I don't know if maybe I'm just not up with the times, but I've never heard of a situation where somebody got sick from a nonstick pan. So I'm wondering, like,
Have you ever seen the
where all of a
movie
sudden?
Aaron Brockovich?
No. Oh no, but is that the pool?
There's
Are
like
those the
that.
swimming? They're
No,
swimming
no,
in
no.
the...
This is
Oh,
Julia Roberts, and she's a lawyer, and she's suing.
okay.
I think it's PG&E
Okay.
in California or something like that. It's because there are chemicals that were not handled properly, and they were in
Right.
high concentrations and not collected in the way that they should have been. And
Okay.
because of that, people take that information and think
Okay.
any amount of that
Of that
is dangerous and is going to kill me.
I think
When
I
in
know
fact,
I think I've seen
what it
clips of
is,
that.
it's like there's a huge concentration of that material that was going into the groundwater. Any chemical like that would be a problem.
At high
Yeah,
concentrations.
you shouldn't do that. There's a reason why we store things in the way that we do, transport them in the way that we do. It keeps everybody safe because you have to transfer some of these materials, which on their own in huge concentrations can be dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
But once you put them together in small doses, they're not dangerous anymore. They become a
Right.
different chemistry.
Product. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily they become a different chemistry. Sorry, like chemistry.
Well, you know what
yeah. I take your example and I'll make it concrete. I mean, hydrochloric acid, HCl is the chemical formula. Very dangerous, very corrosive. Need to take a lot of precautions in transport, in use, and in disposal. Yet we have it in our stomachs. And I don't get eaten from the inside by the hydrochloric acid sitting in the stomach, digesting my food because it has a purpose. And so it's really concentration. So again, we come back to the concept of dose making the danger or dose making the poison.
Yeah. So in my world, a lot of people talk about the danger of styrene. I don't think there's really any conclusive evidence that shows that it is any more dangerous than any of the other feedstocks that go into plastics. Now, I'm not going to sit there and just drink liquid styrene. That would be a bad idea. But when you polymerize it, then it becomes a different chemical structure.
Yeah.
And then there's no residual styrene. And then so that means whatever's contacting your food is technically a different material than styrene. But then everybody thinks styrene, polystyrene, dangerous, bad.
Yeah.
When
you're right.
in fact, it's not.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And you wouldn't drink a bottle of washing up liquid, or you wouldn't drink a bottle of a bleach or detergent or a pure alcohol. you wouldn't drink a bottle of pure distilled water either, for
It's
other
gross.
reasons that we can go
I've done
through.
that on accident. It's not good.
But your comment is absolutely right. Styrene and then polystyrene is a completely different chemical structure.
Yeah.
And it's one that we, as in the chemistry world, we would call that absolutely inert, or
Yes.
essentially inert, because it's been polymerized. There's no more reactivity left in the bonds, and so it becomes an inert structure.
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. Two completely different chemicals.
Yeah, and it's not going to hurt anybody. But try telling that to a legislator that just had an NGO in there the day before saying styrene is going to kill all of your babies. And the fact that, and they do this. These are the kind of conversations that are happening out there because it's scientifically illiterate people got a piece of information. They're trying to do the right thing. At least I hope they're trying to do the right thing, because sometimes I don't know if there's money involved, but they're trying to do the right thing and they're trying to protect people.
Yeah.
But they're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
They're running the exact wrong direction.
Yeah. And if I can, I'd like to say a little bit about why I'm so serene or not panicking or not worried about all the chemical exposure that we have on a daily basis. Because a lot of these chemicals, especially when we talk about synthetic chemicals, I've mentioned previously they're tested and they're regulated. And in order to bring something to the market that's regulated, it needs to go through a thorough battery of tests, not just in vitro, so very sensitive tests in a lab setting under lots and lots of controlled conditions at a high concentration to see if there's any effect in a petri dish. But there's also done in vivo tests, so using models or different animal models in order to determine, is there a toxicity for mammals, eventually for humans or non-target or other non-target organisms at different doses. And so when it comes to toxicity, this is very, very well studied and very, very well measured in order to determine at what point does this become a danger, at what concentration, and is it likely that the population is exposed to that concentration?
Yeah. Are they going to be drinking out of the Roundup? Yeah, hopefully not. But you never know. At that point, that would be very dangerous. But people are people, and people don't like the redirections. They don't want somebody telling them how to do or what to do.
Exactly. It's the same for a bottle of bleach or a bottle of alcohol, a bottle of gin, a bottle of washing up liquid.
Well, I hear bleach does well with COVID. I've been told that if you ingest it.
I just know. I wasn't planning on going down that. But you've opened the door
Oh,
now.
no.
I mean,
I'm probably going to cut that part, but
if that
I don't need to piss
that
people
was
off.
said by anybody who may or may not have been elected as a president in the United States, if that was said, the reaction that the scientists in Europe had was just one of shock. It's like, how can you say such a stupid thing to the general public? And of course, when a person of influence says these things, there is always an effect. And I don't know, but I do ask the question, did incidences of bleach poisoning increase or decrease after that statement was made?
Let's check it. I think somebody can do it. There's a lot of money out there right now to do this kind of stuff. But I think you're touching on an interesting point, because I think, and I'm probably going to piss some people off with this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I think the people that are influencing us are becoming dumber.
Oh, yeah.
And so those people that are driving where culture goes are not as intelligent as they used to be. And because specifically when it comes to science.
Yeah.
And so these people are loud.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the Ricky Gervais when he's hosting the Golden Globes and he tells all of the famous people, you went to less school than Greta Thunberg, so please don't get up there and tell us what to do with politics. That's the kind of stuff that I'm talking about with science, though, because you get these people on there that they say things in very authoritative ways. This is what you need to do to be better. And then half the time they have no clue what they're talking about.
Yeah. They don't have
and they're
the
driving
expertise.
people, and people are following them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. So I'm not alone in thinking we're becoming dumber as a society.
And we're having less critical thinking about what we're told.
Yeah.
And I think that's also an important factor. And I think AI could play a positive role here
All right.
in terms of critical thinking. I'm optimistic that by having tools like AI will help us fact check better information that we have. I'm hoping.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
there,
even use Google anymore, honestly.
just
I
Chat
just use AI.
GPT.
Yeah,
All
it's
right.
so quick. Gives you because I
I've
think
never
it's
used it. I don't even know how to use it.
really.
Yeah, you're gonna have to teach me one of these days. But
Oh my God, it's like it really is good.
I saw another social media post. It was Grok fact checking his creator, Elon Musk, online, and that's a good point because that's what these machine learning tools are supposed to do. They're supposed to take all of these diverse streams of information and distill them down and just focus on facts.
Yeah.
And if that's what machine learning is doing and it's not driven in a certain direction based on the zeitgeist of the culture, then I think we're in okay shape. My worry is you're going to get politicians involved and they're going to have opinions and they're going to start censoring what comes through Chat GPT because it's whatever. And that's when we get into danger with that kind of tool, because then it's not talking facts anymore, it's talking opinion.
Yeah.
So that's my big worry. But
Yeah.
honestly, I think I applaud you first and foremost, because I know how challenging it can be fighting with keyboard warriors. It's very difficult. I've actually come to find that a lot of my biggest detractors early have become pretty close at this point, because I think, like you, we have opinions and we have facts, but at the same time, we're not just towing company lines. We're going to say what's fact and what isn't, even if it's not necessarily working out in the best interest of the industry that we come out of. And I think that kind of honesty and transparency really helps with engagement and will really help win these type of discussions, because if we're the first ones to say, yeah, that's not great, we shouldn't do that, but here are the facts about the bigger picture that you need to be aware of, I think if we do that, then we can really make changes. Do you feel like you're making a difference?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I do feel that I'm making a difference. And there's two reasons that I'll give you why. Is the first reason on why I feel there's a difference being made is, for a long time, years, I don't know, for a long time, I think that as an industry, we stayed far too quiet. And we left a vacuum, we left a void. And that void and that vacuum was filled with stuff.
Welcome to the plastics industry.
Welcome to the pesticides discussion.
Yeah, exactly.
That was filled with stuff. I call it BS, so bad science.
Mm-hmm.
And it was filled with this BS. And as an industry, as a scientific community, we didn't venture outside of our labs, of our offices, and say simple things like, actually, what you've just said isn't correct. You know, here's epidemiological data for the last 20 years, and it explains to you why. I know you can't understand it exactly, but, let me show you the highlights of this prospective study that followed, thousands of people over a period of time. And I think we stayed quiet and we left that vacuum to be filled. And
I think part of that, though, is people in your line of work typically are not that great at communicating with the public, taking those very high level things and distilling them down into something that just anybody can understand.
Yeah.
And I think you do that well, which is why you've seen success.
Yeah. And I think we're getting better at doing that, explaining these difficult concepts in simple language. And so, the first reason was, I think we're filling this void. And the more that scientists come out of their labs and talk, and it's not even about challenging, it's just about bringing evidence and saying, actually, this is wrong what you've said. I'm seeing more and more people doing it. And I think that's positive. So there's a few people started, and then more and more people join, and then some more people join. And so we're having this, can I say, snowball type effect, I really feel at the moment. more and more scientists, industry and independent scientists, are coming out and discussing is the first reason. The second reason is one which surprised even me, is I've received messages, direct messages from people thanking me for, I didn't know that, Simon. I didn't understand it was so complex. I had no idea it took so long and so much research in order to achieve, in order to do this science or to do this research. And so they're the two things which really give me hope for the future, that there is a place for science in society. And I think that's one of the things which drives me, is my desire to bring science back into the everyday life of the citizens of the world.
Well, how do we change the illiteracy part of it outside of social media? Because I'll candidly say I took 1 year of physics in high school and got out of all science because I took an AP class, so I didn't have to take science in college. That was the only science class I had after my 8th grade year, was just the one. Didn't have any chemistry. I never took a chemistry class in my life. So I couldn't even tell you, outside of what I've picked up working in this industry and hanging around much smarter people than me, do we need to push more on the sciences in school? Do we need to make that more mandatory, that people can understand these things? Is that where we're missing out? Or what do you think?
I think it's part of the equation. There's not one magic silver bullet here. I think, yes, we need to continue to encourage people to go into sciences, to continue to encourage education. For me, the other part of the pillar is the trust part. Not everybody needs to be a football player. Not everybody needs to be a scientist. Not everyone needs to understand how, I think one of your games you have is baseball, I think.
Yeah.
Which I sort of describe as boring cricket. I don't know if you know cricket, the sport.
Cricket's pretty boring. I'm going to throw that out there.
Cricket is a game which lasts 5 days, 2 teams. It's like baseball, but more exciting because you get to drink for 5 days.
Well, you can drink for 5 days, just go to 5 different baseball games. You can do that too.
And I think trust is a key thing we need to work on, is societal trust of society, of scientists, of experts. I think that's a real pillar we need to work on, is trust as well.
I think there is a big gap in trust with any institution, specifically in younger generations. My generation and below, I think there are more and more people that don't trust the government, that don't trust institutions of any kind, churches, schools, whatever, because they've been told that if you do this, this, and this, it's going to lead to X outcome, and X outcome isn't happening for them. So they just assume they've been lied to their whole lives. And so now they've thrown everything into doubt. Not everybody's like that. Look, Sam's been successful, but the rest of her generation really struggling to find work after getting out of college.
Mm-hmm.
There's just this huge gap in any sort of trust with any authority that I think has become pervasive. And because of that, when scientists or anybody, just like a Fauci, I know we don't want to get political, and this isn't about coronavirus or whatever, but this is like, I don't even care if the guy is crooked or whatever, but just nobody trusts him at this point. And everybody just assumes that he was lying. And I don't know. I don't know anything about coronavirus or any of that science, but I do know that I can talk to anybody on the street and 50% of them are going to say, yeah, that guy was full of it. And they don't have any clue. They don't know anything about the science, but they have strongly held convictions that that guy didn't know what he was talking about. And I think it's just a perfect microcosm of what's happening in the world today when we talk science, because there's a lot of people that think they know, but they have no basis for any of these things that they're saying. So I'm happy that you have hope, because there's part of me every single day that's just like, I think we're lost, and I don't see how we're going to come back from this.
Yeah, but I agree. And I think, I don't know if I'll sort of say this before, we may want to cut this out, what I'm about to say.
All right.
What can we do as citizens of the world? I mean, what can we do? I can completely understand. I apologize, you two being US citizens, why a lot of people in the US have lost trust in the government, in the current administration or the previous administration or the one before that. Completely understand. We're sitting here in Europe watching what's happening over there, and most of it we can't believe. You know, did he just say? Did he actually just
We're a
say that?
sideshow. Yeah.
Did he actually just do that? Did he just change it? But no, tariffs. And anyway, we're watching, and what can we do as citizens is really, at least in Europe, is to really focus on evidence-based discussion and evidence-based dialogue, and to listen to people that have expertise on the subject. And how do you know somebody has expertise? Because in my opinion, they will be the first person to say, I'm not an expert on that topic.
That's a great point. I can't tell you how many brilliant people that have well-founded positions that usually started off with, this is what I know now that could change tomorrow, because it's
Absolutely.
constantly evolving. And being okay with the possibility that your opinion may be wrong is a good place to start.
Absolutely.
Like that humility of knowing, and I've said that on this show a lot. It's like, right now, I don't think microplastics are the big concern that everybody's making them out to be. I could be wrong. There could be studies that come out in 10 years that show a distinctive link between cancer and microplastics, and then I'll have to take back everything I said. And I will willingly do so, because I like to live in the light. I like to live in the truth. And if the truth says this, I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to argue with it. Let's just roll with it. I have strongly held opinions and beliefs, but I could be wrong about all of them. That humility, I think, is lost on a lot of people.
Yeah.
What do you think, Sam? I haven't heard you in a while.
I know. Well, I was listening about what you just last said, and I was trying to think how I because I've said a lot, how I just like kind of do my thing.
Yeah.
Just like, but I also, because I try, not that we're talking politics, I try to stay out of, I just kind of do what I do, and then like, but I do have opinions, but I don't like
we
talking.
know you have opinions. I've heard
No,
your
I
opinions.
know. But I think when it comes to the space of, like, again, I think it all stems back to what I said before. And I know that, Simon, you kind of touched on this too, is that like anything anybody says, like about something about drinking bleach, about COVID, it's like someone said it who is influential and people trust some people, and then they'll go do it. So I think for me, it's more, it's like I have beliefs, but at the same time, it's more so I don't even know if it's a belief or I'm just unsure. I just don't know. And I just continue to learn.
It's a good place to be.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't even
Yeah.
have something where I'm like, well, I believed this, or maybe I don't even know. And then something happens where I'm like, oh, I don't really think that. But when it comes to like being a fact or not, I just keep getting humbled. So I just
It's a great place to be.
I don't really spend a lot of time on things that maybe they are serious, but I just try to be so just like I'm just living life. I try not to worry about things, which is perfect because I am constantly learning. But it's nice that it's not crushing anything that I've like spent my whole life believing, because then I'm more so just getting educated rather than getting my belief kind of turned around. It's more, this is this, and then I'm more learning from that, and then that becomes kind of what I believe. But like I said, it's not like one thing that I have stuck in my brain that I am like, this is this and this is this, and I know it. It's more so I'm just learning as I go, but I really got to find reliable sources.
Being less dogmatic is the best place to start.
Just kind of doing what I do, and then learning as I grow older and I become more in this space. And even this conversation like made me learn about, as silly as like the dog pesticide thing is, like I'm a recent dog mom, so I'm freaking out all the time. So I never even thought about that, and now I feel like I've just learned so much even just by listening. So that's kind of how I try to go, is that I just live life. It seems a little like amateur maybe, but
no.
And then I just
honestly,
learn as I go.
More people need to do that. More
I
people
try not
need
to
just
worry
go
about
with
like the
flow.
things that aren't super like that deep or that serious that I need to worry about. Not that it's not serious, but it's like eating something with chemicals in it. Like it's just, to me, it's not that.
Yeah.
You're gonna be good.
I
Like,
think
gosh.
following experts is important.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing the source of the information that you're consuming, I think, is another big thing.
Yeah, and I think that's what I could be doing better for sure.
Okay.
Is where
And
I'm
that's good.
finding my information. Again, it's not like I'm looking for it, but I mean, you scroll on TikTok and God forbid 5 seconds of my attention is captured and I'm sitting there locked in.
Yeah.
And then I believed the oat milk thing. So it's like, I think that I need to, I'm like so gullible. It's like, tell me anything and I'll believe it. I mean, I'll probably forget it the next day. Like I said, if they say that about oat milk, sure, I'll go drink it. Like, it's not something, but I think that's something that I definitely could improve on, is where I'm getting my facts and kind of what's behind it and what studies are behind it or education, so that I can really follow those and kind of maybe not change the way I live my life, but at least be a little bit more aware of the things that I'm doing and what I'm surrounding myself with.
So I think that's a good place to be, first and foremost. I think more people need to look at the world with a sense of awe and understand that they don't know everything. And it's okay not to know everything. It's okay not to be an expert on everything. You don't have to act like you are. It's okay to ask questions of people that know more about a subject. I think we've lost that as a society. People think that you have to be a winner, or you have to have these strongly held opinions, and this is what I'm basing myself on. I am a natural person, or I am this, or I am that. It's okay not to be an expert.
I'm just living. I just
Exactly.
do whatever.
We need more people to do that.
If I like this product more than this one, and this one happens to be natural,
Yeah.
cool.
Who
If
cares?
it doesn't, then that's fine too. It's more so just, I think, what works.
And that natural is probably BS too, but we can get into that
Right.
later.
Yeah. You know what
so-
I'm saying? Like, if it happens to be a little better, that's just coincidental at this point.
Yeah. So I did a disservice to the listening audience here. Typically, I ask the same question to every single person that comes on the show. We're going to have to wait until the very end of the show. But what do you think of when you hear the word plastic? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is polyvinyl chloride and polypropylethylene are the two most plastics which I have at the forefront, because they're the ones that I'm looking at right now in my computer, on my iPhone, on my monitors. And when I hear the word plastic, the first thing that I think about is its contribution to helping us live longer, safer lives.
That's a great answer. It's a thought exercise I do with everybody, because I'll have people that are anti-plastics on here and they'll say cancer, it's killing you, and all this kind of stuff. So typically what I do is let the guest have a couple minutes at the end of every episode to talk about anything that's really top of mind for you that we haven't covered, or anything that doesn't even have to be related to this discussion. Just something's burning that you want to talk about.
We've covered lots and lots of topics that I'm really passionate about. We began by talking about chemistry and 3 basic scientific principles. You know, all matter is chemistry. All chemistry is toxic. It's the dose that makes the poison. We've also discussed really briefly concentration and how important that is, and not to succumb to the fear-mongering of reading, we found parts per billion or parts per trillion of a substance in something, and not to succumb to this fear-mongering that presence equals danger, because we know it's the dose that makes the poison. And after that, I think the important messages that I'd like to share is really, there are people trying to con you and trick you in the world. By generating this fear and saying, stop buying this, buy that, stop using this, use that, we have to ban this. Exactly. Yeah. It's marketing, it's BS, it's bad science. And so really, I don't think everybody needs to be an expert. Everybody needs to ask questions when they're worried. I think my real hammer home message is really, the regulatory authorities are there and they're not trying to kill you. These substances are controlled by, they're regulated and controlled. And thanks to modern technologies like plastics, pesticides, fertilizers, genetics, the list is very, very long. We actually live longer, healthier lives than we ever have before.
I think that is an excellent way to end this. Simon, this has been a blast. I knew it was going to. I knew we were going to talk about a lot of different things and we're going to be all over the place. But you distilled it home for us right there at the very end. So, Sam, anything else to add on your end?
I love this conversation.
Yeah.
And this is something that I wasn't expecting to talk about. But I'm glad we did, because I don't know a ton about plastics, but I really don't know anything about chemicals. So I'm happy to say that I'm signing off knowing way more than I did when I signed on. So I appreciate that the knowledge that you brought and your time.
Yeah.
This was a fun conversation.
So
Thank you.
For Samantha and Simon, this has been the Redefining Plastics podcast. My name is Justin Riney. Thank you all so much for joining. If you want to learn more about the plastics industry, recycling, check out these other videos. Please like and subscribe.